You mentioned in your first press conference that this was a heart move. How does your heart feel now that you're on the job?
It feels filled. This morning I spoke with the football team and I asked them, I said, how many of you had other opportunities? And so many raised their hands. And I said, why did you choose to come back? And I actually pointed to Noah and I said, why did you choose to come back? And he said, it was family, and the University of Arizona is a really special place. And another young man said, love. And I said, we share that in common. And that's the reason why I came back, and spending time with our student athlete, whether it's Caleb Love or Isis Bay, or even watching our women's tennis team, and they beat Reno on my first day on Sunday. And it fills your heart.
How did your love of sports begin?
When I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is in the 80s. Actually, I guess it was the late 70s. I was born in 1972, so I'm really dating myself. But my first team was the Huggy Bears, and I think it was like under 5 soccer team. Sports gave me an opportunity to compete, and you weren't judged negatively. Like, you were encouraged, and I knew I loved to compete, but sometimes you don't know how to express that, and sports was the way to do that.
When did you know that you wanted to work in sports?
Well, second grade, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and I come from a family of teachers, but I had a great aunt, Aunt Mary, and she was a lawyer in San Diego. And I remember seeing her, and she was so elegant, and she had this incredible wardrobe and great clothes and just so elegant. And I remember telling my mother, I said, what does Aunt Mary do? And she said, well, she's a lawyer. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to be. So I knew I was going to go to law school. And then my younger brother was going to be we grew up in the 80s, San Francisco Bay Area, and we loved the 49ers. And so our goal was he was going to be a professional football player, and I was going to be the first female GM in the National Football League. Now, we didn't really understand like the difference between being a GM and an agent at that time, but I've always wanted to do that. And you know, I worked at the NFL. I've worked in the Management Council in an internship when I was here in law school, and I've interned at the Raiders. And I love the fast-paced, dynamic, competitive environment. But in my heart, I'm a teacher, and the ability to impact student athletes' lives, that's where my heart is.
So you were going to law school, you wanted to be an agent or a GM, yes. And then what?
And then I realized that while that was great, I love the opportunity to be in higher education. And to be able to, you can still be just as competitive, you can still have such a dynamic atmosphere, but you get to prepare student athletes and help them achieve their hopes and their dreams at a critical junction in their lives. I knew what a student athlete experience could do, and I know the power of higher education, and to be able to be a part in that, that was really special.
You also had the difficult experience of helping your brother through his, football accident. How did that shape you as a person?
Purpose is incredibly important to me. When you understand your purpose, you can withstand the hard, the what, if you will. I remember Roman went to Cal, and he didn't have an electric chair at the time. He had a push chair, and so I would push him to his class, and then I would go study for the bar. And I remember one day I was walking on Fulton Avenue, and I see this pinkish salmon-colored building, and it was the athletic department. And so I walked in, and I met this random man walked in, and he was Dan Coonan, and he was the compliance director. And I actually at the Pac-12 tournament, I ran into Chris Dawson, who was also someone that I ended up interning for at Cal, and that's what set me on my path. I did not know I wanted to be an athletic director at that time. I loved the opportunity of working in higher education and working in a competitive landscape like athletics, but I didn't know what the end game was. And it was actually Sed Dempsey, who used to be the athletic director here. He was a consultant when I was at Fresno State. And we were having breakfast at Marie Callender's one day, and I was very pregnant with my son Jackson. Like, uncomfortably so. And he asked me what I wanted to do. Do I want to be an athletic director? And I said, well, can women do that? And he said, yes, absolutely. There's Debbie Yao and Barbara Hedges. And that little conversation and that little bit of a belief that he had in me actually painted a picture for what I could do. I sought out Debbie Yao, and she is a mentor to this day. She's like a second mother to me.
And going off of that, you've been a trailblazer pretty much everywhere you've been, including here at Arizona, being the first woman Hispanic athletic director. Is that something you think about often?
I do, in that I recognize I have to do great work. If we have excellence in this athletic department, then it opens the door and it keeps it open for the next group of women, the next group of Latinx young ladies who come up. And you know, I've told the story when I was at Missouri and I met with our soccer team, and I used to answer it really flippantly, and I changed after I met with the young lady, and she was also Mexican, and she was from California, and she saw me and she got kind of emotional. And I asked her, I said, well, may I ask why you're emotional? And she just said, I just never knew a woman could do this. And I thought I needed to be a lot more intentional. I needed to provide context, because you never know who was going to be watching. But when I talked with the football team today, and I said, there's not a lot of women that do what I do, so that means we've got to be that much better than the rest of our competitors, because we're going to keep this door wide open.
And you've been on the job about a week. Every time I've seen you, including in Las Vegas Pac-12 tournament, I feel like you're speaking with a student athlete. Is that kind of, you know, your main focus when you're coming here? What are the kind of relationships you're trying to build with the athletes?
That's the reason why I do what I do. They inspire me. They galvanize. They're they're just the reason, and they're the best part of what I do. And we have 500 plus student athletes here, and I remember the hardest part about leaving Missouri was leaving my students. And I remember Jackson, my son, who also was one of my former student athletes, and he said, Mom, there's going to be other student athletes that will need you too.
You've said Arizona's financial issues are not unique to this university, but what needs to be done to reverse those?
They're a challenge, let's make no mistake about it. They're a very big challenge, but what we're going to do is when I first got here, I have 5 priorities this first quarter, and one of which is analyzing that budget. I don't have all the answers yet, but I've spoken with John Arnold, I've spoken with our team here, and we're going to link arms, and we are going to figure out not only a budget in the short term, but let's build a model business. Like, how do we do that so that we sustain excellence? We provide that incredible championship experience for our student athletes. That's what we have to do.
Are you considering naming rights to Arizona Stadium?
Right now, there's nothing off the table, but I don't have specifics.
What are your thoughts on that new economic impact study that came out, and how does that fit into the financial plan that you guys are creating? I'm really glad that Dave Hickey and President Robbins and all of our colleagues who worked on that did that. I think that was great forward thinking. When athletics is strong, when athletics is successful, it benefits the university. Admissions goes up, philanthropy goes up, brand awareness goes up. We are a great marketing tool for this incredible university, right? We've all heard that front porch analogy, but the impact that it also has on the community, now it's quantified. You've had meetings, I'm sure, with coaches. What are some of the things that you've been discussing with them in those first meetings?
I want to get a chance to get to know them as leaders, as coaches, understand what motivates them, understand their short-term needs, kind of their longer-term needs, and figure out how we can provide those resources for them to be successful.
When you're not working, what do you like to do for fun?
I like to run, I like to cook. Yeah, I say I'm remarkably one-dimensional, but I love to run and I love to cook, and I like to bike and I like to swim.
What's the best thing you cook?
Chili rellenos.
Okay, so we're coming over to your house for
Please
chili
do,
rellenos.
yeah.
Sounds good.